paranormal. It surrounds us. It's everywhere. Tonight, you will hear from the people who live and work within these highly active locations, all in the efforts to discover America's most haunted. With your host, ghost hunter and author, Dan Terry.
Good evening, boys and ghouls. I am Dan Terry, your ghost host with the most haunted, coming at you from the mysterious mountains of Mount Airy, North Carolina. We have been trying to get this guest for so long, and one time we had one set of problems, had to cancel. The next time my computer died right here, which I'm also coming at you from a brand new desktop. And the next time, there's constantly something going on. Well, today we have Cheralyn Lambeth. And you guys are going to love this. She is a professional monster maker. And she worked with Jim Henson. She worked on the Muppet Christmas Carol. She worked on the TV show Dinosaurs. She's been an actress on several different programs. But I'm here with her because she wrote a book we're going to talk a lot about called The Haunted Theaters of the Carolinas. And you guys know, if you follow me at all, I've been through a bunch of haunted theaters. There's just something about theaters that keeps people, that's where they choose to spend their afterlife. So let's bring up Cheralyn and discuss the ghosts of the Carolinas.
Hi.
Hey, it's good you finally made it here.
Yes, and thank you so much for having me on the show. I've been looking forward to this, and I'm glad we finally made it happen.
Oh, I couldn't believe the number of problems that kept popping up, but you're here.
Yes.
Cheralyn, are you a ghost hunter as well as a cryptid person?
I am. I'm one of the investigators with the Charlotte Area Paranormal Society. And we do a lot of investigations in Charlotte, in fact, in a lot of other areas as well. So, yes, I'm a ghost hunter as well as a monster maker.
Well, from Charlotte, that's only a couple of hours from me. So I haven't heard of your team yet. Great. Hope to get more of you all on here.
Quite a while and keep pretty busy, especially recently. So we do a lot of interesting things.
Well, from where I'm at, and I know you've hit the whole state and some of South Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
But near me, I know of at least 2 theaters that's allegedly haunted. Do you know of any around the Mount Airy area?
Not so much around Mount Airy. And I will tell you, when I was writing my first book about haunted theaters, I realized there were a lot of other theaters I hadn't had the chance to hit yet. And so I'm seriously thinking about doing a second one. But I know there's one, for instance, in Hickory. There are several in the Greensboro area. So as you said, they are all over.
There is one in Mount Airy. It's called the Andy Griffith Theater.
Oh, yeah.
And it is on the tour. And I do the tour around here. And there is, every time I hear a new story, it's just every few months, somebody else on the tour says, well, I worked there, I acted there, I did costumes there, and they've got a story. But they will not let us in to investigate.
Oh, I know. That's always frustrating. You know there's some good stuff there, and yet you can't get in to see it.
Right. So let's talk about your book, though. What theaters do you hit?
There are several in both North and South Carolina, and many that I've worked at. You know, you were just talking about the Mayberry Theater or the theater there in Mount Airy. I worked at the Lost Colony Outdoor Drama, which is one of the places Andy Griffith got his start. And the theater there, the Waterside Theater, is absolutely very haunted. The year I was there was a lot of activity going on. So
and where is that?
It's on the Outer Banks. It's where they performed the Lost Colony drama, talking about the first British colony here in America. Yeah, mysteriously vanished. So the theater there, of course, is very haunted. There's we have several here in the Charlotte area. Theater Charlotte is haunted. Imaginon, which is a fairly brand new theater, is also haunted. And then in South Carolina, you have the Abbeville Opera House, and of course, the Dock Street Theater in Charleston.
Okay. Are you going to be branching out a little bit? I know of a couple in Virginia that's pretty haunted, apparently.
I've thought about branching out because, my background has been in theater, and theater people kind of take their ghosts as par for the course. Practically every theater you'll go to, work in, be in, has a ghost or a good ghost story. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I would certainly be interested in collecting other theater stories from other places.
Well, remind me to talk to you about the fabulous Fox Theater in St. Louis.
Oh, I was on one of the first.
Oh, that place is crazy. I got the most awesome video from there. We'll have to talk about it sometime.
Absolutely. I'd love to see that.
Recently, I had a friend of mine who runs a ghost tour and ghost group out of Dodge City, Kansas.
Oh.
We started out talking cowboys and ended up all about theaters because there was 2 haunted theaters there that he'd been in. Seems like wherever we go, there's a haunted theater somewhere close, and that it's real. It's not just folklore or legend.
Yeah, well, and as you know, the theater world is pretty superstitious. But as you said, that doesn't mean that the ghost stories aren't real. There are quite a few theaters that, as I said, I've worked in where I've had personal experiences myself. And, there's also some theaters that, one, for instance, that's in my book, that it's down in Spartanburg at Converse College. They leave a seat open for their patroness on opening night. She's passed away many years ago, but they leave a seat open for her on opening night and leave flowers at her portrait. So, regardless of whether or not her ghost might actually be there, it affects the way they operate the theater.
It could be good luck too. It's just a good luck charm.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of luck there.
Well,
in theater.
The tradition of giving actors flowers on opening night stemmed from back in the day. People actually used to steal them from graveyards to give to the actors. So that's kind of where that tradition got started.
Now, if you want a haunted theater, that's how you get a haunted theater.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So which theaters did you personally investigate? Did you manage to get into any of them?
Yes. I worked at Imaginon, the Children's Theater of Charlotte, and had some experiences there. Of course, I worked at the Lost Colony and had some experiences there.
Tell me about the Lost Colony.
Oh, my goodness. Well, the year I was there was actually a big anniversary for both the play and the colony's founding. And as our costume shop supervisor put it, there was much spiritual unrest that year. But it was certainly one of my most striking paranormal experiences. I was working on the costume crew for the show. We had just finished a performance. It was fairly late at night, so we were shutting everything down for the night. I was in one of the hallways. It's a wooden floored hallway where I was sorting clothes, and I heard footsteps coming up behind me on the wooden floor. It's unmistakable. You can certainly hear people walking on a wooden floor. And thinking it was one of the other crew, I kind of pulled my work aside, let them pass. Well, the footsteps went right on by me with nobody there, continued down the hall, and the door at the end of the hall opened and closed by itself. And
wow.
Yeah, and that was actually, I think, the turning point where I was like, this is cool, and this is something I want to learn more about.
You can always tell a ghost hunter when something spooky happens, it's like, can you do that again?
I know, exactly. Well, people always ask us, I'm sure you've heard it too, as a paranormal investigator, aren't you afraid? And we're far more afraid of falling through old wooden floors or running into rabid animals.
I've done that.
Yeah, things like that.
Yeah, I've done that. I had a friend going through what she thought was old insulation, turned out to be bat guano when they got a light on.
Oh.
So, yeah, I understand that. But, yeah, if we see a ghost, we go to it.
Yes.
And other people will get away from it. It's just wild.
Yeah.
Unless you're on ghost adventures.
We want to learn more.
Exactly. We need to know why it's there. Okay, so what else have you investigated that you had an experience in?
Here in Charlotte, we have a great old theater that's in the process of being revitalized called the Carolina Theater. And I know there are multiple Carolina theaters, but the one here in Charlotte had been an amazing theater back in the day, and they're trying to rebuild it. And Katz has done an investigation there. I haven't actually worked there, but I've been through it. And it's definitely a grand old building. There's apparently a former crew member that haunts it. And I can't wait to see it when it's finished. I also can't wait to see if there are any experiences in it when it's finished, because as we all know, construction and changing things around tends to stir up activity. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Have you tried to get into it while it's being rebuilt?
Not recently. The last time I was in through it was before the pandemic, and sadly I haven't been able to be back since. But they've continued to work on it, and as I said, I'll be very curious to go in once it's finished and up and running.
I think I'd be asking if they'd let me in, since, maybe they know you.
Well, I think we're going to keep trying. And another theater here that I did some plays at, I didn't really work there, performed there, was Theater Charlotte. And that's built on the site of what was thought to be an old graveyard or an old cemetery where enslaved people were buried. And so they think there may be some hauntings there, or that the ghost of one of the former founders might be there at the theater. That there's also actually a movie theater here in town called the Manor Theater, kind of a sister to regular theater, to play theaters. And it's shut down, sadly, but it's highly haunted, and it's in my book as well.
Oh, that's wild. I was in one over in Herman, Missouri, that started out as plays and then became a movie theater.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Some excellent photos there of believe it or not, we had a interesting photo of a woman in what looked like a mink coat. And if you really look at it, it looks like she's surrounded by gentlemen. And again, this thing's been open since 1890, 1900. So I don't know.
Well, and you never know. And we always think, in hauntings, you have a what could be called residual haunting, sort of like an action just being played over and over and over again. And I tend to think many hauntings in theaters are residual hauntings because people have been performing the same actions over and over and over again for years or decades or sometimes even centuries. So, it's almost like a record playing itself again.
So, and I agree with you completely, but there also seems to be a lot of intelligent hauntings in theaters.
Oh, absolutely.
They just can't give up the spotlight.
Well, and one theory is that spirits go to the place they were happiest in life. And I think certainly many performers had their heyday and their best times at the theater they worked at. And so it makes sense that they would want to return.
Yes, it does. It does. So, so there's a few theaters. What about South Carolina?
South Carolina, my favorite theater in South Carolina is the Dock Street Theater in Charleston. And the great thing about the Dock Street Theater is it's apparently haunted by a man named Junius Brutus Booth, who was the father of John Wilkes Booth. And Junius Brutus Booth was an actor, and it was said he often whistled before performances, and apparently his presence can be felt or seen by the sound of someone whistling in the theater. So, and it's a beautiful old theater. It's an old building. It had been a hotel at one point, and it's still an active theater today. It's still an operating theater. It had been moved from its original location on Dock Street. It's now on Queen Street in Charleston. And I try to go by there every time I visit Charleston.
So it was John Wilkes Booth. I know his older brother was a actor, but I didn't know about his dad.
Junius Brutus Booth was his name, and he supposedly haunts the theater.
So he came from an entire lineage of actors.
Of performers and actors. He did.
From the South.
Yes.
Wow. So much, and there's so much history also that goes through a theater like that.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and that's one of the reasons that I think I got into paranormal investigation and ghost hunting, because I also am interested in history, and it's all tied into history together. And it's always fascinating to me that if you are actually able to see an entity or a spirit from the past, you're looking at something that's actually from the past that we don't get to see today. So that's one of the things that really fascinates me about paranormal investigation, is seeing those snippets and bits and pieces from our past.
When I was in the Fox, there was a particular spirit who didn't want me to leave the room. And every time I tried, he would cause the electronics to go totally crazy.
Oh.
And it turned out, I was a police officer at the time, and he said he'd committed a murder and wanted to confess.
Really?
And I had several groups coming in and out, and everyone, including myself, was just stunned how long and how strong this spirit continued. This continued for several hours. Mm-hmm. So, how do they have that much power? How could he have that much strength?
Well, and one theory I've heard, and I believe this too, one of the reasons that theaters are haunted is there's a lot of energy there. Electrical energy from the lighting and the equipment and everything else, and emotional energy from the actors doing their work and the audiences being involved in the play. And I think all that energy helps contribute to allowing an intelligent entity to manifest if it wants to, because there's certainly a lot of power in one form or another to draw on. We all know how it happens that when you're investigating, many times your batteries drain immediately, your camera is shut down right when something exciting usually happens. And it's the theory that the entity is draining that energy. And so if I needed energy to manifest, I think a theater is a pretty good place to look for it.
Apparently, yeah. That's so amazing. But let's just step away from the theaters for a second, because I also want to talk about your work with Jim Henson.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sadly, I started my work with the Muppets shortly after Jim Henson himself had passed away, which was very sad. But I had the amazing opportunity to work in the New York shop on the TV show Dinosaurs and film The Muppet Christmas Carol. And, like many people my age, grew up with the Muppets, grew up with Sesame Street. And to have the opportunity to actually be there in the shop with the people doing these amazing creative things and seeing some of your favorite childhood characters, your favorite childhood friends, it was an incredible experience there. I sat at a table, and sitting right next to me was Bunsen Honeydew, Muppet Labs. And it was just such an incredible experience to be able to do that.
And you said when you created a creature, a lot of it's based on the actual cryptids you had studied about.
Well, and it's interesting. One reason I got involved or interested in cryptids is the more I work on creatures for shows, TV shows, films, things like that, the more I realize how easy it is to fake the evidence of creating a cryptid. There's a lot of speculation, excuse me, about the Patterson Bigfoot film. How was it real? Was it fake? I want it to be real, but the more I look at it, the less convinced I am that it's real, and the more convinced I am that it's a person in a suit. Because as I always say, I'm not a professional creature scientist, but I am a professional creature builder, and I know how it can be done.
I know one of the guys involved in that film passed away.
Yes.
And I think he said that it was faked before he died, but the other guy, if I understand, continued to say it was real.
They do continue to say, and there's support for both sides. Interestingly enough, the man that supposedly made that suit was supposedly right here in Charlotte. Philip Morris of Morris Costumes, right here in Charlotte, and he claimed for years to have been the person that created that suit. And the Morris family does in fact have an amazing collection of Bigfoot memorabilia, photographs, casts, all sorts of items related to Bigfoot. So they do have an impressive collection in that respect. But yeah, they claimed that they were the ones that made the suit for that film.
And the other side, the Patterson and all, says, no, this was real. And did they buy it from them then? Wow. Okay. We've lost our sound. Or I have, one of us.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there we are.
Here we are. Sorry about that.
Okay. So we were saying that the folks who claimed to have made the costume, did they claim they had sold it to these folks?
They did. Well, they claimed they made it specifically for them. One thing that's not often talked about in stories related to this film is that Patterson was actually looking to do a Bigfoot documentary and was trying to get funding for this project. And of course, for such a project, he would have needed a Bigfoot suit. So it seems likely that he might have commissioned one to be made, and he was not getting funding because people are like, oh, Bigfoot's not real. You're not going to get anywhere with this. So it seems to me very convenient that he just happened to stumble on a Bigfoot while he was out for a ride in the woods. I think I would have been more convinced if he had said, look, here we are. We've been out looking for one, and here it is. So, yeah, I personally, I'm not convinced, but I know stories go both ways.
Let's see. What else have you've done some acting on some of the Star Trek movies, right? At least one.
I've done some work on some of the Star Trek properties. I used to work for Paramount when they had a headquarters here in Charlotte, and I worked on Star Trek: The Experience and some of the other Star Trek properties, the Star Trek Earth Tour. And I've done some Star Trek fan films that I'm very proud of. They were a lot of fun. But yeah, I would love to get into the real Star Trek franchise.
Oh yeah, yeah, they take care of it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to work on the Star Trek properties.
Okay.
Now, some of my other acting was I was in an episode of the Vampire Diaries spinoff Legacies. I played Elsa Einstein on an episode of that, and that was a lot of fun.
How many shows have you been on, or movies, or whatever?
I have been a background character in, oh goodness, a large number of films. I was in The Patriot. I was in one that was recently shot here in Charlotte called The Eyes of Tammy Faye. I was in Leatherheads. So I've had the opportunity to work on a lot of projects, and it has been an amazing career.
Now, that was The Patriot with Mel Gibson, not Steven Seagal, right?
Yes, with Mel Gibson.
The good one, right?
Yes, the good one.
What did you do on that one? I've seen that movie, I'll bet, a dozen times.
I did several things on that movie. I did what they call what's called dying and aging, which means we're the team that has to take all the brand new, beautiful costumes that they bought or built and then make them look old and worn and lived in, and in some cases blown up. We had, of course, several battle scenes where we had to do costumes for some of the soldiers who had been injured. So we worked on those to make them look like they had been in a war. But I also was an extra in that. In fact, there's the scene where the first scene where they're sitting in the church, where if you look over the shoulder of one of the characters who's speaking, you can just make me out if you know what to look for.
Any other ghost stories for the theaters before we move on to some of the other stuff?
There's a great story about the theater located at the University of South Carolina in Columbia. Okay. And at that point, that building, the Longstreet Theater, it's called, it had been used as a hospital or a field hospital during the Civil War. So there is speculation that it might be haunted by some ghosts from the Civil War. But there's also a great story, and this kind of leads into the cryptids, where one of the most famous ghosts, so to speak, might not actually be a ghost. There's a critter there called the Third Eye Man or the Sewer Man that was first spotted at near Longstreet Theater at the university back in the 1950s. Okay. And there had apparently been sightings of this creature on and off up until I think the early 2000s. So it's supposedly, it looks like a man in a silver suit with a third eye in the middle of his forehead. And there have been a lot of newspaper articles about that, but I do talk about that creature in my book.
Oh, I'll have to find that one out. I've never heard of that creature. What's your opinion? Demonic, cryptid?
I honestly don't know. When it was first sighted, a couple of students saw it, and it was apparently hunched over on the ground eating a chicken. And when it saw them, it disappeared into a manhole cover or down into the sewers. And then not long later, a few months later, a campus police officer apparently saw it. And and again, it's humanoid, dressed in a silver suit, so I'm not really sure what that might be. Could it be a prank? I don't know. It seems a little extreme for a prank. So,
of course, I'm going to have to ask, when you say crouched over eating a chicken, it's not a bucket of KFC or anything.
No. No, it was apparently a dead whole chicken, according to the stories. Yeah. So again, a bit extreme.
This is one I'm going to have to research a little bit, because that is intriguing.
Yes, it's definitely an interesting story. And they've since closed off a lot of the catacombs or sewers underneath the city. Of course, the utility workers still go there, but apparently a lot of them don't like to go there, and I can certainly understand why.
Yeah, I guess so. A third eye eating a raw chicken
raw
in
chicken.
an alleyway near a theater. Charleston has an interesting set of stories connected to it, doesn't it?
Well, that was Columbia, but I think you can say South Carolina definitely has their share of some good ghost stories, as we do.
That's incredible. Any other ones, real briefly, that before we move on from Columbia?
I know the Abbeville Opera House down in Abbeville, South Carolina, is haunted, and I have yet to visit that personally, but it's on my list. And then here in North Carolina, I mentioned the Carolina Theater here in Charlotte. Well, there's a Carolina Theater in Greensboro that's also haunted, and I worked there one summer. They actually had a huge fire many years ago, and discovered that apparently someone had died in that fire. So there's speculation that perhaps it might be haunted by that person, but it's also a beautiful old building that's a still active show house, I should say.
All right, Cheralyn. Well, we're going to be right back. I'm going to step off to the side and pay a few bills, and we'll get back and discuss more about the haunts of the Carolinas.
Excellent.
Be right back.
This is Margie Kay inviting you to check out the latest edition of Onyx News Magazine with thought-provoking articles about UFOs, extraterrestrials, cryptids, consciousness, and amazing photos of anomalous objects and more. And there's always a feature article by our managing editor, Lee Spiegel. Get a free digital issue with your free subscription to the UNX network, or get a printed copy with your X Club Gold subscription in the U.S. Visit unxnetwork.com to see details. That's unxnetwork.com.
All right, friends, let's get right back to talking to Cheralyn, because apparently the Carolinas are even more haunted than I thought, and I found a lot around here. So, Cheralyn, what's your most haunted story from here?
Well, as I mentioned, I think my most striking was at the Lost Colony, but one of my many side jobs is I work at the historic Rosedale House Museum here in Charlotte, and we are a highly haunted site. I run our haunted history program there. We do a haunted history tour the last Friday of every month in the fall. And then we also do paranormal investigations there 3 times a year, and it never fails to give us some good evidence.
Well, what kind of hauntings are we looking at there?
Well, the house was built in 1815, and it was a private home up until 1986 when it was sold to the Historical Foundation. And we know that some of the former residents are there. In fact, one story that I love to tell is that the second resident owner was a man named Dr. David Caldwell. Now, he was a doctor at that time. He moved into the house in 1833. And before he became a doctor, he got a degree in literature from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. My alma mater, go Tar Heels. And I always like to keep him informed on how the Tar Heels are doing on any particular game day. The year we were winning the national championship in basketball, the house was very active. So I like to think maybe he was happy about that.
Okay. That's pretty cool. All right. So when can people do the ghost tour? How do they find out about that?
They can go to our website, which is historicrosedale.org, or they can also go to the CAPS website. The Charlotte Area Paranormal Society teams up with Rosedale to do this event as a fundraiser for the house. It brings in the money for preservation and other programming. And they can go to the CAPS site at capsnc.com.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely one we're going to have to look into. So the Rosedale.
Yes, historic Rosedale. It's a historic house museum right here in Charlotte. It's a beautiful urban oasis, literally 3 miles from downtown, uptown.
And what was its position during the Civil War? Was it under siege, taken over?
Luckily not. Charlotte actually was spared a lot of fighting and damage during the Civil War. Now, many of Charlotte's residents left because they were afraid that Sherman, on his way to Atlanta, was going to stop them and attack Charlotte as well. But Dr. Caldwell died Christmas Eve, 1861, which was the eve of the Civil War. And his second wife at that time thought it would be unwise to stay in Charlotte. So she basically packed up the family and their belongings and moved back to her family home in Rock Hill. And the house was basically rented out to various tenants until the end of the war, when some of the family members came back and continued living there.
And it was the same family up until
1986, 6 generations of the same family for almost 200 years.
Okay. There's so much history around this area. I'm always thrilled by it. let's talk about some of the photos you sent.
Yes.
We're going to throw, now was this with, is it caps?
Some of it was with caps. Some of the photos I took myself, and some people have sent me. This is all part of my collection. I like to collect really great ghost photos to be able to show or use in future articles or books. And so I'm starting to get a pretty good collection. So they run the gamut.
All right. Well, Race, would you throw one of the photos up for us so we can discuss it? Oh, Races, there it is. Okay, now there was another one before this, kind of more of at a distance.
Yes, that's the close-up. There we go. So you can see the perspective. But that was a photo that I accidentally caught on a trip when I was driving to Chicago on a business trip, actually. And I had a dashboard camera and had it running because I wanted to catch some of the beautiful scenery as I was driving through the mountains. And when I was reviewing it, I didn't see this what you would call it, anomaly image standing in the middle of the road until I zoomed in on it and realized that it was almost a humanoid looking figure right in the middle of the road. And it wasn't a reflection on the windshield. You can kind of see from the angle that, there's a reflection to the right of the windshield wiper, but there's not anything else that really could be a reflection of there on the center of the windshield. It wasn't a reflection. It wasn't an image on the windshield. There wasn't anything in the road. As I said, I didn't see anything at the time. So I thought that was a very interesting anomaly and had to wonder if something had happened there.
Now, obviously, it's in the mountains. Do you remember where this was located?
It was right as I was going through West Virginia, and I don't remember the exact location, unfortunately. But I know it was as I was going through the mountain area on my way up. I could probably find the approximate area if I went back and retraced my route.
Well, I've done a lot of work now in West Virginia, and the whole state is just insane with ghosts and legend. And
they have a lot of great legends and stories as well. So I had to wonder if something might have happened at that particular location, maybe a car accident or a rock slide or something else that might have caused that.
But it seems like everywhere in the state there is something, be it the asylum, the old prison.
Oh, yes.
There's a medical hospital ship from World War II that's there and is haunted. There's everywhere you turn. It seems like there's haunted places there in West Virginia.
Oh, yes. The Haunted Majestic. I actually had an amazing time. I was invited as a guest there this past October to do some talks and got a chance to see the ship. And I'm really glad I got the chance to see that. It was an incredible location.
The man who runs it was a guest on my show, and the stories he had to tell is just incredible.
He was a lot of fun to work with and talk to. Yeah, he told me some really great stories too. And I really hope to get back there sometime and be able to go through the ship and investigate it more closely. I just had a chance to walk through and see it, but I'd love the chance to spend more time there.
Okay. Let's grab another photo there, if you would, Race. Okay, where are we at on this one?
Now, this is a very interesting photo in that I was actually on a ghost tour on vacation with my family in Charleston. We were just taking a walking ghost tour for fun. And this is a photo of what's called the Circular Church on Meeting Street there in downtown Charleston. And when I first snapped this photo, and this was on an actual camera, not my phone. When I first snapped this photo and I was looking back at it, I could see what looked like a misty area to the left there. You can probably just make that out. And realized I would have to go back and look at that a little closer on my, I was able to blow it up on a computer. So when I got it back to a computer and blew it up, you could still see the mist, but it wasn't until I lightened it. And a friend of mine actually said, "What are all those people doing there?" I said, "What people?" And he pointed it out. And if you look to the very far left there, you can see what looks like a group of people standing on the stairs. A woman in a long dress leaning her head against a taller man. You can see their feet and legs fairly clearly.
But it seems like it goes all the way down past the fence and into the concrete too.
It does. It looks like there's another misty image that goes down, that covers almost the whole side of that photo. Right there in the middle. And it's hard to tell in this picture. I lightened it up, but there are a set of stairs there at the church, and it looks like the people are standing on the stairs if you look at it closely. And then there's another image, the brighter image that's a little closer and covering more of the frame.
Well, I can see what you're saying. I see the woman with her head down. I see the light-colored shoes and pants of a man and a coat. Boy, I don't know what to say about that one. That's awesome.
I know. And like I said, I didn't notice it until a friend of mine, or Langton, a friend of mine, pointed it out to me, and I wasn't even looking. And that's also often when I get my best evidence, and you may have found that too. And when you're really not even paying attention, it somehow it appears, and you've got some really good photos.
And then, is there a man to the right of that woman?
Yes, that's what it looks like to me too. That there's another figure standing there.
Okay. Huh. Wow, that's awesome. So that was in Charleston.
That was in Charleston, downtown Charleston, at the Circular Church on Meeting Street.
Is that a park or something? I see what looks like a bench.
No, that's actually that's the cemetery attached, the graveyard attached to the church.
Okay, I did wonder. Yeah, yes. That because they did a lot of the above ground small crypt, for lack of a better word.
They did, and the church itself is still an active church. They still have a congregation, and the cemetery, or part of it, is in the front of the church, and then they have more graves in the back behind the church.
Wow! So that was just a luck.
That was just luck. I just happened to.
Do you think your ability? Well, let me reword that. Your ghost. For me, ever since I saw the first shadow person, while I was investigating all the time, I could see them basically everywhere. So is it the longer you're in, the more open you become to this?
I think so. And I think a large part of that is you start to become accustomed as to what to look for. Mm-hmm. You know, there are many times, our team leader refers to it as her spidey sense, but there are many times, you know, if you walk into a building or other place and the hair on your arm stands up, or you just feel this tingle, and you know, there's something here. And now we know as investigators that might mean that there's an entity there. And so I think certainly the more we investigate, the more research we do, the more study we do, the more practiced we become, the more we're able to pick up on and know what to look for.
Right. This next photo, that's Eureka Springs, isn't it?
Yes, that's Eureka Springs. And I didn't take that one. A friend of mine actually sent this to me, and a friend of his had taken it. And he sent it to me, and it's like, excuse me, I don't know what to make of this. If you look down at the end of the hallway there, I mean, clearly you can see the man walking down the hall, but if you look at the very far end of the hall, you see the shadowy figure of a woman, and it looks like a woman in a long dress. And the light, there's a light at the bottom. That's actually the floor light at the end of the hallway. It's down in the floor. It's shining through her dress. So it's a translucent figure that the light is shining through, but it very clearly looks like a woman in a long dress.
Okay. Let me ask you this about that picture. There is a crescent on the wall right about where that shadow is. Have you blown up on that to see if that's a sign for the Crescent Hotel?
I have not, but I suspect that's what that would be.
Okay. The reason I bring it up is, and I wish I'd found it before this, I took a photo down that same hallway, and I was looking at that circle thinking it was an orb. I blew up on it. And it was not. It was just a sign, but there was a wooden door next to it, and I managed to capture 2 children inside the wood grain of that closed door.
Really?
Looking at me, I talked to Carol Heath, and he was the guy who started the tours there several years later, and he said that door led to where the children's wing of the cancer hospital was.
Oh, I did not know that.
And yeah, there was how do I say this? A fraud cancer hospital.
Oh,
and the guy who ran it would have the folks write letters to their family, telling them how great they feel, how good they're getting. And then after they died, he would keep sending the photos. So the family would keep sending money.
Oh.
And then he'd send them another note and say, hey, I'm sorry, he passed away. Nothing we could do. We can send you the body for $3,000 or for $1,000. We can bury it here. And he was a real scumbag, but
oh my gosh, that's terrible.
And his ghost is still there too. But anyway, no, that looks exactly like the hallway where I captured the boy and the girl in the door. When I find it, I will send it to you.
I would love to see that. I could pass that on to my friend too. I bet they'd love to see it as well.
Absolutely. Feel free. Okay, so we've hit the Carol. Was there any other photos, or was that all of them?
Oh yes.
Right. Forgot about this one. This one's quite a catch. What's the story on this one?
Well, this is one that someone sent to me as well, although I have been to this location. This is the Stonewall Jackson Reformatory School here. It's outside of Charlotte, quite a ways outside of Charlotte. And it was a boys' reform school, basically, or a reform school and a working school. This, that you can see it says their daughter's cottage, was actually one of the houses there, one of the cottages there on the property. And I'm trying to remember the exact story. I can't remember if it was where the principal lived or where some of the families would stay, but it was a residential cottage where people would stay for a time. And if you look in that window there, you can just make out what appears to be the figure of a bald man in period dress. You can kind of see the top of his outfit.
Yes.
And as I said, I didn't take this picture. A friend of mine sent it to me, but I have been to this location. And I tried to take a photo in the exact same spot. And, I didn't catch anything that looked like that. But that, of course, doesn't necessarily mean anything. But I thought this was a really interesting photo.
Mm-hmm. And I think you've sent us a up close of this photo, right?
Yes. Yeah.
There it
so
is.
You can get a little closer look. Yeah, it looks very clearly like a man. You can see his eyes and I think his nose and then the top part of his suit. It almost looks like he's sitting to the side.
Mm-hmm. I see a handlebar mustache, perhaps, or
Yep.
a mustache running down the sides. What is to his left? My right. There's a... Boy, is that something beginning to come out?
I'm not sure what else might be in there now too. And as we all know as paranormal investigators, there's a pareidolia, which means our brains want to pick out recognizable patterns from unrecognizable chaos. So I always try to be cognizant of that. But there are so many pictures, and this is one of them where I'm like, that just looks too much like a person sitting there.
When several people see the same thing without being guided,
yes,
that's a pretty good sign. That's not just pareidolia. That's something real. Okay. Well, that's a pretty cool too. And you say that's in South Carolina?
That's here in North Carolina. It's just outside of Charlotte. It's the Stonewall Jackson School. In fact, if you look it up on Wikipedia, you can learn a little more about it.
Now, was Stonewall Jackson own the property, or is this after his death?
I think they just named it after Stonewall Jackson. I don't think he really had anything to do with it.
Okay.
But there's modern still working buildings next to this or near this, but then there's a whole campus of buildings from the older school that are kind of derelict and abandoned.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Race. That's pretty cool. So, again, about the Carolinas, where we both live, different parts of the state, but what else do people have to look for when they come to the Carolinas?
Oh my goodness. As we all know, the Carolinas are full of mystery. One of my favorites is the Brown Mountain Lights.
Mm-hmm.
Up in, I actually used to live up in the Asheville area and never saw them until just a couple of years ago. And when I went with the CAPS team to look, and I finally got to see them and see what they looked like. So that was kind of an exciting experience because I'd been there for years and had never seen them until that night.
I went there once and I saw nothing.
Really?
It's just a bad night. But what do you see when you're there?
They really do just look like balls of light. Some of them appear on the kind of flicker into existence on the mountain and then sometimes rise above the mountain and then flicker out. Some just appear above the mountain themselves. It almost looks like a star or planet, and then it flickers out again. There have been numerous studies done. The U.S. Geological Team did surveys there. I think Appalachian State has cameras there on a constant basis, keep watching to see if anything happens. And it is a fascinating phenomenon. I mean, it's almost unique. The balls of light appear in many stories throughout the country and probably throughout the world, but the Brown Mountain Lights are unique to us.
They are, because they're vertical, not horizontal. The ones in Missouri, I can't remember the name of the light now, but there's one there on the Oklahoma-Missouri border.
Yes. The Mako light or Yeah,
I believe it is. And that one stays near the ground.
Yeah.
But these go vertical. Do you have any idea what may be causing that if we were looking for a natural explanation?
None. I will say we know that the mountain area is along an earthquake fault. In fact, we've just recently had several minor earthquakes here in Charlotte within the past couple of months. And there is a phenomenon called earthquake lights that whenever an earthquake happens or is about to happen, mysterious lights will appear. And it's believed that that may have something to do with the Earth's electromagnetic energy, right when the plates are about to move. And so perhaps that has something to do with it. But, you know, the legends are that it's Cherokee maidens looking for their lost braves who died in battle. It's the other legends are it's lost miners. Their lanterns, you know, they died and they're still in the area. One story states that it's the lantern of an enslaved man, a ghost of an enslaved man looking for his lost master. So, you know, there are a lot of stories related to those lights, but no one knows for sure what they are.
And wasn't that situation reported or recorded by early American Indians?
Yes.
Native Americans.
The Cherokee that lived there. And in fact, that's one of their stories, that the lights are the spirits of the braves that died in a battle there. Or I've also heard it's the lights, the torches of their wives and daughters who are looking for them.
So it could be the energy of the plates rubbing together, causing energy to come up, or it could be something supernatural like that.
Yes, and I think that's the great thing about it. It's a mystery, and it will probably likely be a mystery for a long time to come. I think that's what makes them one of the reasons they're so fun to watch.
Well, what did you see while you was there? Are they really bright, like little spotlights? Or are they more like reflections? What did you see?
Some of them are bright. There was one I saw where it was a very, very bright orange light that seemed to form just above the mountain and then rose up above the mountain. And it was quite large and quite bright. It was a bright orange, and then it just slowly flickered out. Others have appeared just like small white lights. I didn't see this one, but there have been reports of blue lights that have been seen there. And, you know, a lot of people try to dismiss them as, oh, they're the lights of the cities that are there, the lights of the train coming through, the lights of automobiles. But as you said, they were reported long before any of that existed in that area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the same with the one in Missouri. They claimed it was lights from a highway, but when the highway was shut down for repairs, the lights were still there. So that kind of messed that one up. Okay, well, let's get back to your books. Where can people find them?
You can find both of my books, both the Haunted Theaters book and my first fiction book, Twas Halloween Evening, A Tale of the Zombie Apocalypse. They're both available on Amazon.
Well, tell me about that second one. We haven't even got to talk about that.
That was my first fiction book, and that would happen almost by accident. I belonged to a little informal writers group that would meet regularly here in Carolina and just discuss our projects. We would have assignments that we would do, and one of our assignments was a drabble on the zombie apocalypse. Now, a drabble is a story of about 100 words, seeing how well you can tell a story in a short period of time. And we were given a drabble to write on the zombie apocalypse. So I started writing my drabble, and it started taking on a life of its own.
Okay.
And eventually it came to be a story of the zombie apocalypse set to the temper of Twas the Night Before Christmas, with many apologies to Clement Moore.
Okay. Well, okay. That's the cover of it. So this is a Halloween poem.
Yeah, it's a Halloween poem. It is a poem that reads just like the night before Christmas. And I did the illustrations myself. I photographed all the pictures and then filtered them and altered them. I kind of wanted to give it the old 1950s B-movie zombie feel.
It looks good. It does.
Thank you.
All right. So you got this one. You got the Haunted Theaters of the Carolina. Where can people locate those? Where can they buy them?
There, and I usually take them with me to shows as well, but you can get each one on Amazon and through my publisher. Shipper Publishing has my book Haunted Theaters, and then Perspective Press, which is a small press here in Winston-Salem. They have my zombie book, and they've been promoting that for me.
I know I do a really good one with my books on ebook format. Are they available on ebook format?
They are not, and I should look into doing that because I'm trying to expand my writing. I've been doing more and more writing lately, and definitely would love to get the word out there on those. I'll definitely have to look into that.
Definitely. They are cheaper, and you don't have, like me, racks of books lying all over the place.
I have a lot of books too.
Cheralyn Lambeth, you are a professional monster maker. I just love saying that. And the author of Haunted Theaters of the Carolinas. Thanks, and I'm so glad we finally got together. Your stories are amazing.
Thank you. And I'm so glad we had a chance to finally catch up too. This has been great.
Well, since we're both here in North Carolina, I'm sure I'll run into you soon.
I hope so. I want to hear some more of your stories too.
All right. Well, take care of yourself. We'll talk soon.
Thanks.
Bye. All right, friends. You heard it. Haunted theaters. Oh, gosh, how many haunted theaters have I been in? I'll bet I could count 6 or 8 of them. Haunted theaters of the Carolinas. New places I'm going to have to go visit because that always makes for a good story. And of course, 'Twas the Halloween evening, a tale of the zombie apocalypse. Interesting stories. Now, of course, that is fiction, but still, looks like it'd be a lot of fun. I do want to ask you all once again, as I always do, about becoming an UNX subscriber. You go to unxnetwork.com, go down a little bit, hit the free subscription. You just got to type in your information like an email address. And what you get is the monthly UNX newsletter, the access to the X blog, which has been crazy busy with all the people coming out about UFOs, the whistleblowers, all of that, and a free digital copy sent to you of the monthly UNX magazine. And there's a couple of them. I did an article on the one on the left about the North Carolina, recently did one on giants. I believe I've got an article coming in on the next one about the St. Louis connection to Jack the Ripper. So just the magazine is well worth way over the time it's going to take you to type your email address in. So you really ought to jump in and subscribe to the UNX network. The other thing we need to talk about real quick is the XCon. The XCon is coming up fast in October 13th, 14th, and 15th in Kansas City. We got the great speakers. Scott Walter is going to be talking about the ancient aliens. Sev Tak, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is going to be talking about speaking with aliens. And she wrote, I believe, a book called You Have a Right to Speak to Aliens. Michelle, again, I hope I'm not butchering the name, Roos, is going to be talking about demonic myths and legends. You all know how much I enjoy a good demonic tale. I've talked to several exorcists working on getting another one on the show. Mindy Taufus will be talking about near-death experiences. And some idiot named Dan Terry's coming to talk about the haunted Midwest, most haunted in the Midwest. So that's all just over the course of the few days. There's going to be a lot more speakers. I'll be bringing more names to you as we get closer. I do know that Jean Walker's going to be there. She's been a guest on the show talking about her life as an alien abductee. And there's a movie called The Raymondsville Terror that is going to be shown there for the first time, I believe. And there's just so much going on. You really need to get down there to Kansas City, get down to the area and get a ticket for this. It's 3 days. If I remember right, mostly it's going to be ghosts on Friday the 13th. It's going to be UFOs and aliens on Saturday the 14th. And on Sunday, they're going to be talking a little bit about cryptids and a few other things. I mean, it's just whatever we get a chance to talk about. The UNX network has so many great authors, writers, article writers. It's got people who investigate UFOs, ghosts, cryptids all over the world. You're missing out if you're not a member of this because there is so much going on in the world. You've seen it. The whistleblowers talking about the Tic Tacs, talking about the government holding several, anywhere from, I've heard from 12 to a couple hundred UFOs. That could include the Cape Girardeau. We've had a guest come here twice talking about the Cape Girardeau UFO incident of 1941. That includes Roswell. That includes maybe that one in Texas, Aurora, that occurred way back. I want to say that was like 1899, 1900, where a UFO crashed in Aurora, Texas. A witness said she saw the Army come in wagons and dig up the body of the alien. Again, there's so much to learn from this, and we've got it right here on the UNX network. So for now, I'm going to leave you all. Halloween is coming. I got to go out and get ready for it. The one thing I need you all to do, though, is stay spooked. Good night.